Hey, my battery, my phone had no memory left, so I'm going to carry on from where I was before. So we were talking about Ugu. Oh, what's his name? God, I'm terrible at pronouncing names. Yeah, it was Ugu, and he was walking past the university gates. So he had never seen anything like the streets that appeared after they went past the university gates. Streets so smooth and tarred that he itched to lay his cheek down on them. He would never be able to describe to his sister Anika how the bungalows were painted the colour of the sky and sat side by side like polite, well-dressed men, how the edges separating them were trimmed so flat on top that they looked like tables wrapped with leaves. His auntie walked faster, her slippers making slap slap sounds that echoed in the silent street. Ugu wondered if she too could feel the coal tar getting hotter underneath through her thin soles. They went past a sign, Odim Street, and Ugu mouthed street, as he did whenever he saw an English word that was not too long. He smelt something sweet, heady, as they walked into a compound, and was sure it came from the white flowers clustered on the bushes at the entrance. The bushes were shaped like slender hills. The lawn glistened, butterflies hovered above. I told Master you will learn everything fast, or see oiso, his auntie said. Ugu nodded attentively, though she had already told him many times, as often as she told the story of how his good fortune came about. While she was sweeping the corridor in the mathematics department a week ago, she heard Master say that he needed a houseboy to do his cleaning, and she immediately said she could help, speaking before his typist or office messenger could offer to bring someone else. I will learn fast, Auntie, Ugu said. He was staring at the car in the garage. A strip of metal ran around its blue body like a necklace. Remember, what you will answer whenever he calls you is yes, sir. Yes, sir, Ugu repeated. They were standing before the glass door. Ugu held back from reaching out to touch the cement wall to see how different it would feel from the mud walls of his mother's hut that still bore the faint patterns of moulding fingers. For a brief moment he wished he were back there now, in his mother's hut, under the dim coolness of the thatch roof, or in his auntie's hut, the only one in the village with a corrugated iron roof. His auntie tapped on the glass. Ugu could see the white curtains behind the door. A voice said in English, "Yes, come in." They took off their slippers before walking in. Ugu had never seen a room so wide. Despite the brown sofas arranged in a semicircle, the side tables between them, the shelves crammed with books, and the centre table with a vase of red and white plastic flowers, the room still seemed to have too much space. Master sat in an armchair, wearing a singlet and a pair of shorts. He was not sitting upright, but slanted, a book covering his face, as though oblivious that he had just asked people in. Good afternoon, sir. This is the child, Ugu's auntie said. Master looked up. His complexion was very dark, like old bark, and the hair that covered his chest and legs was lustrous, darker shade. He pulled off his glasses. The child? The houseboy, sir. Oh, yes, you have brought the houseboy. I Koptagaya. Master's Igbo felt feathery in Ugu's ears. It was Igbo coloured by the sliding sounds of English, the Igbo of one who spoke English often. He will work hard, his auntie said. He is a very good boy. Just tell him what he should do. Thanks, sir. Master grunted in response, watching Ugu and his auntie with a faintful distracted expression, as if their presence made it difficult for him to remember something important. Ugu's auntie patted Ugu's shoulder, whispered that he should do well, and turned the door. After she left, Master put his glasses back on and faced his book, relaxing further into a slanting position, legs stretched out. Even when he turned the pages, he did so with eyes on his book. Ugu stood by the door waiting. Sunlight streamed in through the windows, and from time to time a gentle breeze lifted the curtains. The room was silent except for the rustle of Master's page turning. Ugu stood for a while before he began to edge closer and closer to the bookshelf, as though to hide in it, and then, after a while, he sank down to the floor, cradling his raffia bag between his knees. He looked up at the ceiling, so high up, so piercingly white. He closed his eyes and tried to reimagine the spacious room with the alien furniture, but he couldn't. He opened his eyes, overcome by a new wonder, and looked around to make sure it was all real. To think that he would sit on these sofas, polish this slippery smooth floor, wash these gauzy curtains. Keda afugi! What's your name? Master asked, startling him. Ugu stood up. What's your name? Master asked again, and sat up straight. He filled the armchair, his thick hair that stood high on his head, his muscled arms, his broad shoulders. Ugu had imagined an older man, somebody frail, and now he felt a sudden fear that he might not please his master, who looked so youthfully capable, who looked as if he needed nothing. Ugu, sir. Ugu, and you come from Okba? From Opi, sir. You could be anything from 12 to 30, Master narrowed his eyes. Probably 13, he said in English. Ah, yes, sir. Master turned back to his book. Ugu stood there. Master flipped past some pages and looked up. Nagwa, go to the kitchen. There should be something you can eat in the fridge. Yes, sir. Ugu entered the kitchen cautiously, placing one foot slowly after the other. When he saw the white thing, almost as tall as he was, he knew it was the fridge. His auntie had told him about it. A cold barn, she had said, that kept food from going off. He opened it and grasped as the cool air rushed into his face. Oranges, bread, beer, soft drinks, many things in packets and cans were arranged on different levels, and at the top a roasted shimmering chicken, whole but for a leg. Ugu reached out and touched the chicken. The fridge breathed heavily in his ear. He touched the chicken again and licked his finger before he yanked the other leg off, eating it until he had only the cracked, sucked pieces of bone left in his hand. Next he broke off some bread, a chunk that he would have been excited to share with his siblings if a relative had visited and bought it as a gift. He ate quickly, before Master could come in and change his mind. He had finished eating and was standing by the sink, trying to remember what his auntie had told him about opening it to have water gush out like a spring when Master walked in. He had put on a print shirt and a pair of trousers. His toes, which peeked through leather slippers, seemed feminine, perhaps because they were so clean. They belonged to feet that always wore shoes. What is it? Master asked. Sir, Ugu gestured into the sink. Master came over and turned the metal tap. You should look around the house and put your bag in the first room on the corridor. I am going for a walk to clear my head. Ainugu? Yes, sir. Ugu watched him leave through the back door. He was not tall. His walk was brisk, energetic, and he looked like Izegu, the man who had held the wrestling record in Ugu's village. Ugu turned off the tap, turned it on again, then off. On and off, and on and off, until he was laughing at the magic of running water and the chicken and bread that lay balmy in his stomach. He went past the living room and into the corridor. There were books piled on the shelves and tables in the 3 bedrooms. On the sink and cabinets in the bathroom, stacked from floor to the ceiling in the study and in the storeroom, old journals were stacked next to crates of Coke and cartons of Premier beer. Some of the books were placed face down, open, as though Master had not yet finished reading them, but hastily gone on to another. Ugu tried to read the titles, but most of them were too long, too difficult. Non-parametric methods, an African survey, the great chain of being, the Norman impact upon England. He walked on tiptoe from room to room because his feet felt dirty, and as he did so he grew increasingly determined to please Master, to stay in this house of meat and cool floors. He was examining the toilet, running his hand over the black plastic seat, when he heard Master's voice. Where are you, my good man? He said, my good man, in English. Ugu dashed out to the living room. Yes, sir. What's your name again? Ugu, sir. Yes, Ugu. Look here. Nyanya. Do you know what this is? Master pointed and Ugu looked at the metal box studded with dangerous-looking knobs. No, sir, Ugu said. It's a radiogram. It's new and very good. It's not like those old gramophones that you have to wind and wind. You have to be very careful around it. Very careful. You must never let water touch it. Yes, sir. I'm off to play tennis, and then I'll go to the staff club. Master picked up a few books from the table. I may be late, so get settled and have a rest. Yes, sir. After Ugu watched Master drive out of the compound, he went and stood beside the radiogram and looked at it carefully without touching it. Then he walked around the house up and down, touching books and curtains and furniture and plates. And when it got dark, he turned the light on and marvelled at how bright the bulb that dangled from the ceiling was, how it did not cast long shadows on the wall like the palm oil lamps back home. His mother would be preparing the evening meal now, pounding akpu in the mortar, the pestle grasped tightly with both hands. Chioke, the junior wife, would be tending the pot of watery soup balanced on 3 stones of fire. The children would have come back from the stream and would be taunting and chasing one another under the breadfruit tree. Perhaps Anulika would be watching them. She was the oldest child in the household now, and as they all sat around the fire to eat, she would break up fights when the younger ones struggled over the strips of dried fish in the soup. She would wait until all the akpu was eaten and then divide the fish so that each child had a piece, and she would keep the biggest for herself, as he had always done. Sorry. Okay. Ugwa opened the fridge and ate some more bread and chicken, quickly stuffing the food in his mouth while his heart beat as if he were running. Then he dug out extra chunks of meat and pulled out the wings. He slipped the pieces into his short pockets before going to the bedroom. He would keep them until his auntie visited, and he would ask her to give them to Anulika. Perhaps he could ask her to give some to Nenisnachi too. That might make Nenisnachi finally notice him. He had never been sure exactly how he and Nenisnachi, were related, but he knew they were from the same Umuna and therefore could never marry. Yet he wished that his mother would not keep referring to Nenisnachi as his sister, saying things like, "Please take the palm oil down to Mama Nenisnachi, and if she is not in, leave it with your sister." N always spoke to him in a vague voice, her eyes unfocused, as if his presence made no difference to her either way. Sometimes she called him Chejina, the name of his cousin who looked nothing at all like him, and when he said, "It's me," she would say, "Forgive me, Ugu, my brother," and with a distant formality that meant she had no wish to make further conversation. But he liked going on errands to her house. They were opportunities to find her bent over, fanning the firewoods or chopping ugu leaves for her mother's soup pot, or just sitting outside looking after her younger siblings, her wrapper hanging low enough for him to see the tops of her breasts. Oh God, it's not soft porn. Ever since they started to push out those pointy breasts, he had wondered if they would feel mushy soft or hard like the unripe fruit from the ubi tree. He often wished that Anulika wasn't so flat-chested. He wondered what was taking her so long anyway, since she and N were about the same age, so that he could feel her breasts. Anulika would slap his hand away, of course, and perhaps even slap his face as well, but he would do it quickly, squeeze and run, and that way he could at least have an idea and know what to expect when he finally touched N's. But he was worried that he might never get to touch them, now that her uncle had asked her to come and learn a trade in Kano. She would be leaving for the north by the end of the year, when her mother's last child, whom she was carrying, began to walk. Ugu wanted to be as pleased and grateful as the rest of the family. There was, after all, a fortune to be made in the north. He knew of people who had gone up there to trade and come home to tear down huts and build homes with corrugated iron roofs. He feared, though, that one of these pot-bellied traders in the north would take one look at her, and then the next thing he knew, somebody would bring palm wine to her father, and he would never get to touch those breasts. They, her breasts, were the images saved for last on the many nights when he touched himself, slowly at first, and then vigorously, until a muffled moan escaped. He always started with her face, the fullness of her cheeks, and the ivory tone of her teeth, and then he imagined her arms around him, her body moulded to his. Finally he let her breasts form. Sometimes they felt hard, tempting him to bite them, and other times they were so soft he was afraid his imaginary squeezing caused her pain. For a moment he considered thinking of her tonight. He decided not to, not on his first night in Master's house. On this bed that was nothing like his hand-woven raffia mat. First he pressed his hands into the springy softness of the mattress. Then he examined the layers of cloth on top of it, unsure whether to sleep on them or to remove them and put them away before sleeping. Finally he climbed up and lay on top of the layers of cloth, his body curled in a tight knot. He dreamed that Master was calling him, "Oogway, my good man!" and he woke up. Master was standing at the door, watching him. Perhaps it was not a dream. He scrambled out of bed and glanced at the windows with the drawn curtains in confusion. Was it late? Had the soft bed deceived him and made him oversleep? He usually woke with the first cockcrows. "Good morning, sir. There is a strong roasted chicken smell here. Sorry, sir." "Where is the chicken?" Oogway fumbled in his short pockets and brought out the chicken pieces. "Do your people eat while they sleep?" Master asked. He was wearing something that looked like a woman's coat and was absently twirling the rope tied around his waist. "Sir, did you want to eat the chicken while in bed?" "No, sir. Food will stay in the dining room and the kitchen." This chap's going to take a bit longer. "Yes, sir. The kitchen and bedroom will have to be cleaned today." "Yes, sir." Master turned and left. Oogway stood trembling in the middle of the room, still holding the chicken pieces with his hand outstretched. He wished he did not have to walk past the dining room to get to the kitchen. Finally he put the chicken back in his pockets, took a deep breath and left the room. Master was at the dining table, the teacup in front of him placed on a pile of books. "You know who really killed Lumumba?" Master said, looking up from a magazine. "It was the Americans and the Belgians. It had nothing to do with Katanga." "Yes, sir," Oogway said. He wanted Master to keep talking so he could listen to the sonorous voice, the musical blend of English words in his Igbo sentences. "Igbo. You are my houseboy," Master said. "If I order you to go outside and beat a woman walking on the street with a stick, and you then give her a bloody wound on her leg, who is responsible for the wound, you or me?" Oogway stared at Master, shaking his head, wondering if Master was referring to the chicken pieces or in some roundabout way. Lumumba was Prime Minister of Congo. "Do you know where Congo is?" Master asked. "No, sir." Master got up quickly and went into the study. Oogway's confused fear made his eyelids quiver. Would Master send him home because he did not speak English well? Kept chicken in his pocket overnight? Did not know the strange places Master named? Master came back with a wide piece of paper that he unfolded and laid out on the dining table, pushing aside books and magazines. He pointed with his pen. "This is our world, although the people who drew this map decided to put their own land on top of ours. There is no top or bottom, you see." Master picked up the paper and folded it so that one edge touched the other, leaving a hollow between. "Our world is round. It never ends. Nyanya. This is all water, the seas and the ocean, and here's Europe, and here's our continent, Africa, and the Congo is in the middle. Further up here is Nigeria, and Nuska here, in the southeast. This is where we are." He tapped his pen. "Yes, sir." "Did you go to school?" "Standard 2, sir, but I learn everything fast." "Standard 2? How long ago?" "Many years now, sir, but I learn everything fast." "Why did you stop school?" My father's crop failed, sir." Master nodded slowly. "Why didn't your father find somebody to lend him your school fees?" "Sir, your father should have borrowed." Master snapped, and then in English, education is priority. How can we resist exploitation if we don't have the tools to understand exploitation? Yes, sir. Oogway nodded vigorously. He was determined to appear as alert as he could, because of the wild shine that had appeared in Master's eyes. I will enroll you in the staff primary school, Master said, still tapping on the piece of paper with his pen. Ugu's auntie had told him that if he served well for a few years, Master would send him to the commercial school where he would learn typing and shorthand. She had mentioned the staff primary, but only to tell him that it was for the children of the lecturers, who wore blue uniforms and white socks so intricately trimmed with wisps of lace that you wondered why anybody had wasted so much time on mere socks. Yes, sir, he said. Thanks, sir. I suppose you will be the oldest in the class, starting in Standard 3 at your age, Master said, and the only way you can get their respect is to be the best. Do you understand? Yes, sir. Sit down, my good man. Oogway chose the chair farthest from Master, awkwardly placing his feet close together. He preferred to stand. There are two answers to the things they will teach you about our land, the real answer and the answer you give in school to pass. You must read books and learn both answers. I will give you books, excellent books. Master stopped to sip his tea. They will teach you that a white man called Mungo Park discovered River Niger. That is rubbish. Our people fished in the Niger long before Mungo Park's grandfather was born. But in your exam, write that it was Mungo Park. Yes, sir. Ugu wished that this person called Mungo Park had not offended Master so much. Can't you say something else, sir? Sing me a song, sir.